Welcome to the Soccer Coaching Podcast, where we will discuss all things that impact soccer coaching across all levels and ages. Please listen, enjoy, and share your thoughts on the discussions at the Soccer Coaching Podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Soccer Coaching Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Scott.
And I'm your other host, Mark.
How are we doing, Mark?
Pretty good. It was a funny weekend. No football this weekend. The snow kind of took over. Training was cancelled. No matches on Sunday. There was lots of jobs to be doing at home, unfortunately. So it was a kind of funny old weekend.
Only in England can 3 centimetres of snow bring everything to a close, right?
Exactly. Yeah, very highly disappointing. But I guess it was a nice break. Good to do something different, even if it was jobs that the wife lined up at home.
For sure. But not all bad news, because I think, didn't QPR scrape another FA Cup win on Tuesday night?
I think scrape is probably not a fair description. I think it was relatively comfortable in the end. 2-0 against Portsmouth. Now in the 5th round against Watford, live on TV Friday night.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, maybe we get Arsenal in future rounds.
I hope not at the moment.
That's right. Oh, yeah.
We're not talking about the City game. Although we can talk about Guendouzi's performance, because for me that was one of the most outstanding midfield performances from a teenage player in the Premier League I've seen for a long time. It was amazing.
Yeah, he's underrated actually, very underrated player. Does a great job for the team, right?
£7 million buy, you know.
Yeah.
This is what Wenger was doing in his early days when he first come to Arsenal. Yeah. So look, there's little glimmers. I know I'm digging deep here for some little glimmers of sunshine in what is still a cloudy Arsenal team environment, but there was some hope there.
Getting desperate, maybe.
Maybe that's what it is. And it would be wrong not to mention, obviously, the Patriots' success in the Super Bowl.
Indeed, yeah.
I think that was their 6th victory under Bill Belichick, who seems to have he's just a tactical master, isn't he? Yeah, I think it was the lowest Super Bowl scoring game ever. But I guess when you can manage a game as well as he can manage a game, you don't need too many points, right?
Yeah, indeed, yeah. So did you stay up and watch it, or did you just catch the highlights?
Going to be honest, 2 kids and a busy Monday morning, I recorded it and watched it, the highlights. Yeah. But it was, even though it was a low-scoring game, I still thought it was an exciting game. And I don't know what it's like out there in the US, but I would imagine that most people were rooting for the Rams just because it's the underdog thing, I guess. And obviously the youngest coach in the NFL, I think 33 years old, isn't it? So a bright future, no doubt, and I'm sure they'll bounce back and be even stronger. We've had an email, Mark. We've had a few emails, actually. So just a couple of things to say. We've had some really nice feedback through iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify and some of the other outlets that are on with the podcast. So that's much appreciated. And we've also had some emails come in, and one in particular which fits in well for today. Shall I read it out quickly?
Yeah, please, let's do it.
So what it says: Hi, Mark and Scott. I coach under 11s, under 12s at a professional academy in the Northwest. It was great to listen to your first 2 podcast episodes, and the points you went through in episode 1 are exactly what all other coaches should be thinking about when planning their sessions. Or hey for us. For us here, it is the culture we set that makes the biggest difference in the outcomes we achieve. This is one of your points in episode 1, and I would be interested to know more about your thoughts on this and how you manage to influence the culture within your teams. It would also be great to know a bit more about you two as well. I look forward to future episodes, and I hope other coaches are listening too. All the best, Josh Andrews. So, Josh, thank you very much.
Yeah. I think firstly, before we get into it, it's great to get some kind of questions, right? Rather than we've had some great feedback. It's good to get some questions and even some challenges on some of the things we say. We haven't had that yet, but it'd be great to get some of that as well.
I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah, I'm sure it is as well. Yeah,
maybe after this episode.
Could be after this episode, exactly.
Well, look, for Josh, if no one else, we've taken on board what you said, and we're going to talk today, I think, about what he's put the culture, but we've kind of gone a bit bigger, and we're going to talk about the coaching environment, right? Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah, I think this is a big one. We kind of covered a little bit in the first episode, but it's a huge one, right? It kind of encompasses so many different parts, and it's such an important element of training, and one I think that gets kind of overlooked, especially if you're a new coach. You come straight into it. You kind of think a lot of things around tactical and technical side of things, and actually the environment. You probably you put less focus on the environment when actually that's, to me, the most important thing. I think you can be a coach, the best technical and tactical coach, but if you haven't got the environment right, then you're not going to have the boys are not going to develop at the rate that they should develop at, right?
Totally agree. I think you're spot on. You kind of go with the X's and O's first, don't you? Your session's all about where the cones are going to go, how many players you've got, where the bibs are, what the theme is and stuff, which is important to some extent. But you definitely, well, speaking from my experience, definitely didn't put enough emphasis on the whole environment from the outset. And you're right what you say, but I'd go even further. For me, I think if you can get the environment right, what it does, it amplifies the session and the productivity of that session. And it's that marginal gains thing over long time, so you get your compound interest on that. So it kind of just snowballs the effect of what you're doing. So all the good stuff kind of has more value to it. So let's not get too far ahead of the game. And we don't want to get too scientific either, because we're not capable of that, right?
That's clear.
That's we're just gonna. But we've got to kind of clarify what it is we mean when we speak about the coaching environment. So I guess what do we mean by the coaching environment, then, Mark?
So the environment. So I kind of in kind of I guess a little bit of preparation of this discussion, I thought I started to think to myself, what is the actual environment? And I guess you can think about it really around. I think about the surroundings of the training session. I think a little bit around expectations, some of the values that you set, and you want to come out of that out of the training session. The conditions of the training, obviously the culture is a big one, and I guess you have your own philosophy on how you want training to run, how you want the kind of players to, I guess, play to a certain extent. But I think it's all of those things, and I think we should probably go through those individually and kind of talk about them, because they're all equally as important. But I guess before we get into them, what do you kind of think of the environment? How do you think about it?
Yeah, all those 100%. It's we're not talking about the snow necessarily or the sun, but that does play an impact, right? The actual physical conditions of where you're playing, the resources you've got, the surface you're playing on, that is part of the environment, but it's much bigger than that, right? Yeah. For me, it probably is the culture that you've got, and that can be implicit or explicit. So the environment in which you do the stuff you're doing. And that's not all down to you as the coach. That can be the parents, the players, the team, the club, lots of other things, the area you live in, that kind of stuff. It is the philosophy. Now, that probably is more prescribed in the sense, okay, this is what our philosophy is. Whether or not you actually stick to that is another thing. But that, you might have a philosophy. But I think the three biggest things that I think impact on the environment most are probably the values that you have. And again, you may not even recognise you've got values, but you have, good or bad or indifferent. That's debatable what they are and what they should be. But you're going to have values that are important to you as a club and as a coach. The expectations that you set and you have, again, whether that's implied, actually telling people, explicit, and you're telling them what the expectations are, or they're just implied in how you conduct yourself and the things you ask the players to do. And probably the biggest thing that drives all this would be the habits. So once you've got those, that culture, that philosophy, those values and expectations in place, what habits does that generate then? And then obviously the ultimate position is what leads to the outcomes off the back of all that stuff together. So I guess it's all that stuff, and there's a lot there, right? And it's quite messy, and it's not, you can't own it all and control it all, but you can certainly influence and cultivate it a little bit. Yeah. I guess if you're going to make a comparison, it'd be a bit like trying to grow something. Like if I was trying to grow a sunflower and I had the seed and stuff, but I was just not cultivating the right environment for it, it won't be it's not going to get to its full potential, right? Yeah. But if I can get the soil just right and the temperature just right, and I can get the right amount of nutrients and the right environment with the right things around it, then it's going to be better for that for the process, right?
Yeah, I agree. So I think, again, we kind of spoke about a lot of kind of different things there. I think one of the things that's big, that I think is quite big, is the values piece. And I know that from my kind of training and with my team, I try to have certain values. We kind of talk about certain things that we want the players to be doing all the time in training and in matches, and we refer to them a lot. And I think these are kind of we try to keep them very simple. So I can give an example. So last season and the season before, we had we had three kind of values that we wanted the players to work on every week. And I think ideally when you set these values, perhaps if time permitting, you would sit down with the players and talk to them about it a little bit, so get their input rather than just kind of, I guess, telling them these are our values. It's not always an easy thing to do when you've kind of limited the amount of times you see the players. But the kind of 3 areas that we worked on, and again we try to keep them quite simple, quite punchy, was we had 100% honesty. So we wanted the players to be totally honest. They come along to training, and that within that it kind of encompassed, we want you to work as hard as you can. We want you to walk off that pitch and tell the coaches that you've given 100% and there's nothing more you can give. And also coupled with that is that actually we didn't think about, under the 100% honesty, was all of a sudden the boys, when the ball was going off for a throw and the referee gave it to us, they was then, and it wasn't our throw, they were then telling the referee, actually it's not our throw. Which obviously we had to rein in very quickly.
99% honesty.
Yeah, exactly. We had to rein that in very quickly. But it was just a nice outcome, actually, something that we hadn't thought about, that all of a sudden there was that kind of honesty when they were on the pitch. We had 100% teamwork, so we really focused on being part of a team. So if one of your players perhaps wasn't maybe pulling his weight, then perhaps you could kind of G him up a little bit, and also communicate with each other, say to each other, great shot, great effort, who you marking, that kind of thing, really trying to cultivate a team environment. And even to the point at the end of training, we used to kind of shake hands. All the boys used to shake hands to say thanks very much for training today. Just trying to create that teamwork and create that kind of nice culture. And then finally we had 100% football, which was really wanted, and we called it actually 100% total football, just giving the boys freedom to go out there and express themselves on the ball. And if they want to make mistakes, that's fine, no issues, as long as they kind of I guess try and learn from those mistakes, and we don't want an environment where they're scared of making mistakes. So that was how I kind of, or myself and my assistant coach kind of approached it, and we used to talk that through in training every week. We talked it through in for matches, and it was just something for the boys to think about all the time. These are our kind of values, and we done that for under 8s and under 9s actually.
Okay. So you said two interesting things there. Well, the first thing was about the player input in those 3 values that you put in place. Did they get a say in those?
We, to be honest, perfectly honest, we didn't really. The way I kind of presented it to them is these are the 3 areas that we're going to work on, and or I want you to kind of be kind of focused on, and I then asked them, what does it mean to you, kind of thing. So I got their input that way. Now, I think in hindsight, I would have probably gone back and done it differently. I think I would have maybe sat down for 20 minutes of a session, spoke about what do you want to get out of training each? What do you want the environment to look like? You obviously need to make it so that they understand clearly if it's younger players. But I think it's important if I was doing it again that I would go back and take that approach. And
it's young age groups, right? So maybe it's something. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do think they'd be capable, but certainly if you had under 14s, 15s, then you know it's a bit of a no-brainer. They can do that, right, with some guidance. But under 8s, 7s, 8s, 9s, maybe you do need to steer it a little bit.
Yeah.
And the other point you made about the exact words, because that's something that I've learned over the last couple of years, especially with the younger. Well, actually, with all players, but particularly with the younger ones, they take what you say literally.
Yeah.
You know, so you've got to be, your words are so important, aren't they? Yeah. And also checking that, because you can say something with the best intentions about a value that you've got, but it could easily be, misinterpreted, by the player. So checking what that means to them, because that's quite a bit 100% honesty. Like you say, well, what does that actually mean? I think as adults would get that quite quickly, but it's just clarifying that. So having the value and being descriptive about it is one thing, but just checking the understanding and making sure that's consistent through, your coaches, your players, so everyone's on that same page with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think having those kind of things in place, if perhaps one of the players isn't maybe kind of working to the level you would like them to work, or the optimal level to work at, you can kind of have a quiet chat with them to say, look, these are the things that we believe in. These are the things that you've kind of signed up to. Are you being 100% honest with me right now in terms of the way you're kind of working out there? and you can have that kind of discussion, right? So you've set your values, and you're kind of you're holding the players against them a little bit, or they're there for them to kind of follow, I guess.
And it probably gives you a focus, you and the other coaches, around a constant criteria, but it's not too limited that it kind of becomes stifling. But limit enough to make sure that actually we've got that consistency around these 3 areas. Because if we get these 3 areas right, hey, the other stuff might click into place a little bit easier, right? But so I totally get that. Yeah. Well, we had something similar. So I guess it is age and stage appropriate, but for us, we wanted to keep it quite simple, and it was 3 things again. So this is really for training. We've got other values that we put in place for the players for matches, but the general approach to turning up to our sessions for training is 3 things. It's respect, it's effort, and it's fun. Yeah. It sounds a bit simple, and it could even sound a bit childish, but I tell you what, if you come to our sessions with respect, and that means we ask the players, if you ask them now what it meant, they would say that respect the time, the coaches, each other, the parents, the equipment, the opposition, the referees, respect everything, okay, because you get what you sow. Effort, so you come and you put the effort in, because there's no point in doing a session if you've got to apply yourself the best. And fun for everyone. It should be fun for you, for your teammates, for me, for the parents, and everyone watching. If we do those 3 things, we're going to be doing all right. So again, it's having those values in place. And I do love the values. We'll back up a bit to philosophy and culture, I think, because that probably is important too. Because it should dovetail in, shouldn't it, in theory? But it's probably the values you put in place that will have the single biggest impact in how your training goes. That would be my opinion. If you can get those values right, and if your players can really buy into it, understand it, and if they're the good values, for the players you've got, then that's where I think you get amplification of what you're doing. Because if they're consistent and they're the right ones, and the players buy into it, and you can maintain those, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, however many things it might be, if you can maintain those at a level that's going to work for you, then that's when you kind of see those sessions and everything's flying. And also when the players turn up, the expectation is already in place about, okay, this is what Coach Mark wants. He wants that honesty, he wants that teamwork, and he wants that football focus to make sure that we're going to perform. So I get that. I get the environment that I'm in now.
Yeah, and I saw those values in place actually. So I think probably worth adding that you kind of set those for the under 6s, right? Under 6s, and then you followed it through with under 7s, and you've done that across all 3 teams. So you've got, and I think we've explained it in previous podcasts that there's an A team, B team, and C team, and I think you kind of implement that across all 3 teams, right? So it was a joined up effort across the age group, and I just think I remember being there watching, because my son is in your kind of under your stewardship, unfortunately. But I remember, and I just thought it was
not
excellent.
Playing on Sunday.
It's a sub now, or in goal, man. I just thought it was excellent that it was across all of the teams, and everyone. The communication was clear, concise. It was very simple. It was respect, effort, fun. That was ref. It was. Do you know what I mean?
That was and it was just. It was just more luck than judgment.
But it just worked really, really well.
But your point's right. This is not an ability thing, right? That's what I like about it. It doesn't matter how good you are at playing football right now. It doesn't really matter, So you might have played for the last 3 years and be an outstanding little under 7-year-old player that loves the ball and can beat 5 players and bang top corners. You might be a player that still doesn't know if his left and right foot yet and what his strongest foot is, which is absolutely fine. But you can be respectful.
Yes,
you can put in some effort and you can keep it fun. So you're dead right. And and what we did there. Probably for about 6 months. And I remember every session, it would start, would end with it, and would go through the whole session saying it if it wasn't happening. You don't have to point fingers at any of the players. I mean, they're little kids, right? So you don't name and shame people. But, is that respectful to do, boys? No, it's not. Right, let's not do that, and off we go. And there'd be one boy doing something, throwing little black bits around, or it might be. You don't address him, you just address it. No, it's not right, off we go again. And they learn so quickly. Then when you've got that foundation in place, you can then look at, some more technical things. So we've got some more technical things that we have in place now with the players. But, we've managed to layer that on top of those principles there. But if we need to, we go back to, hey, respect, effort, fun. Just as a little reminder, But it'd be harder to put the technical things in place that we've got around some technical values we've put in place now. If we didn't have those kind of more general values from the outset, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I think the other thing that you did very well here is actually... You can set these values, but you've also got to live and breathe them as a coach, right? Your job is you've got to keep the session fun, because the players are not going to have fun unless you make the sessions fun. They're not going to be, if you're not kind of respectful in training and in matches, they're not going to be respectful either. Do you know? It's all, and if you're not putting the effort in, and you kind of turning up at 5 minutes after the training's meant to start, then that you can't expect them to kind of have that kind of level of effort as well. So I think the coach has to live and breathe those values, and really almost becomes a leader, and shows this is what we stand for as a team.
Yeah, it's so true. I think in most cultures, whether that's on a football team or at work, usually often the team mirrors the person in charge, don't they? Whether they want to or not, they often do. So you're dead right. And you know what? If I'm not being respectful, then why would my players be respectful? If I'm not putting effort in, why would they bother? You know, if I'm not making it fun, well, they're not going to make it fun. Guaranteed. I'm the grown up and I'm coaching little, and so you know, it's even more important. It's a good point. So maybe we've kind of gone into values, which is great. But I think there's the two levels above that would be philosophy and culture. So if we're working backwards from values, we kind of look at a philosophy then. So, you know, what's your thoughts around? I mean, then this is, I don't want to give you a leading question. What's your thoughts around, you know, club or team philosophy?
So I think philosophy is an interesting one. I think that we're part of a kind of grassroots club, and it's a fairly big grassroots club now. And really, a lot of grassroots clubs have philosophies in place, how they want teams to operate and run. And I think that ideally that you would perhaps follow that kind of philosophy. If there is a club philosophy, then that's the approach you should follow. But I also think that you need to put your own kind of stamp on the way you want the players to behave, the way you want the players to act at training, how you want them, and even to a certain point, how you want them to play. Right, I think you need that. I think again, you need their input into these things, and as the players get older, it becomes easier to do that. But I think that you need to be clear in your philosophy how you want them to play as well, and how you want training to look, and training obviously should then mirror what you want them to do on a match day on a Sunday. How do you think about philosophy?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the idea, right? So it should act as the guiding principles for the behaviour, and it should in inverted commas, because it should. And let's be honest, I think probably 99% of clubs have a philosophy. I also think 99% of coaches wouldn't know what that philosophy was. You know, if I'm honest with you, and I'd say that for our own club as well. You know, and it's not criticism or a dig at anybody. That's just the reality of it, because usually it's a document on a piece of paper that gets given out on a membership handbook or whatever else, and is never looked at and seen again. So that doesn't mean it's not important, but it's about living and breathing it again, right? So I think it's essentially about setting your stall out to say, okay, this is our overarching approach to what we're trying to achieve, and it should marry up with your culture, which kind of sits above this, and it should be underpinned by your values, which kind of sit underneath it. So it sits in between the culture of what you've got as an organisation, as a club, as a team, but also the values you've put in place. It's that middle bit, if you like. It's not unimportant by any stretch of the imagination, but how important it is probably depends on how much you live and breathe it. I think the culture has a bigger impact. We'll come on to that in a minute. But your philosophy can be fantastic if you use it in the right way. It's another tool for you as a coach to be able to kind of get your principles in play and your values out there by saying, look, you know, we want to be a team that of hardworking players that try and play the right way, that are going to progress and learn together. It should be serious fun. It's going to be player centered, whatever it might be. But if you've got that in place, then actually that's much easier then to be able to say, right, okay, on the back of that, these are the values we're going to have to try and help us execute this philosophy we've got in place. And I've done this myself. I mean, on coaching courses, if I had written out my philosophy probably 2 years ago, I would have probably written out a whole sheet of A4 paper. Now I think, well, first of all, I think your philosophy can be adaptable. I think it can change. It might change on the environment you're in, the players that you've got, how football might have changed. I mean, people will say Pep's philosophy. I think we've done 2.5 podcasts without mentioning Messi or Pep.
There we are.
So I've just broken that, haven't I?
It's like you know him, right?
Yeah, me and my mate Pep. But everyone talks about, okay, we play from the back, we do that. Well, let's not get confused. I mean, maybe he would say this isn't the case, but the reason Pep Guardiola has just chosen to try and play from the back is because he sees that as the best way to progress the ball forward to create an opportunity to score a goal. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I can promise you, the minutes that all his players are pressed, so when the opposition overcommit or commit players man for man forward, and he's got a 1-to-1 opportunity for a longer ball down the pitch, that is the ball that Ederson will play. Because it's the right pass on. So, not to get too off piste here, but my point is, your philosophy can be adaptable. And I don't think Pep's philosophy is about playing from the back. His philosophy is about how do we best move the ball forward to create a chance for us. Now, what he had at Barcelona is very different to what he had at Bayern Munich and what he's got at City now. Philosophy is probably similar, but his approach to play is different, and his principles will be different. So I mean, I'm quoting like I know him, I don't, but that's my interpretation of it. So I think having a philosophy, say, this is my style of play. We keep the ball with possession base. We play from that. I think, you know what? Great if that's your thing, but actually, you know what? What are you trying to do? What's the ultimate objective of football? It's to put the ball in the back of the net, right? So, okay, with the resources you've got available and with your own personal beliefs about the sport, then you have your philosophy. But having a one-page document that's kind of carved in stone about this is me, Scott, as a coach, that's my philosophy, and wherever I go, I'm taking this with me, I think it's probably misguided, in my personal opinion. We might get some emails now.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. I think it's an interesting discussion. I think it kind of gets a little bit off of the environment, but I think it is a good discussion. And actually, one of the great things when I went through level 2, so I went through the new level 2 FA level 2 badge, and as part of your project that you have to do, as part of my project, I kind of put together something around the principles of play, how I wanted how I kind of would like the players to play. And my kind of thoughts were that I wanted them to play out from the back where we could. So I wanted the kind of defenders to have the ball. I wanted them to understand what it's like to have the ball rather than just defending. I want them to understand what it's like when they're under pressure. And I think that in a lot of the teams that we play, they're just going to kick the ball long. And I think you kind of miss a trick if that's all you're doing. I think you want players to kind of have the ball, especially at younger ages, and I'm doing under 10s. You want them to have the ball, and you want them to understand what it's like to be under pressure with the ball. And if you make mistakes, that's fine. We learn from it, and we kind of move on. But anyway, I think maybe that's a debate for another podcast. But
it's interesting because you do think you're right. You kind of go off in different ways with this, but I guess for me, a philosophy should be a bit more ambiguous, almost a bit more, non-specific. It's just you're right. You want the boys to play football, right? Exactly that. And actually, it might all go full circle. And in 5 years' time, it may be actually let's go more direct. Like it was, previous. So I think it's even changed now. I do think that the game's changed from playing from the back to being a little bit more direct in the sense of trying to move the ball forward quicker than it was maybe with the Spanish team of 2010 or something, where it was quite a possession base and we'll break them down eventually. I think it is more direct now.
It is,
but that's not long ball. It's not percentage football. It's still trying to keep the ball and make good choices. But if you haven't got a philosophy in place, then how do you produce your values, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. So how then? So I think we kind of covered philosophy and values. How do you then think about the culture, and how does that differ to philosophy?
Okay, so for me, I think the culture would be it's the wrap around it. It's the big stuff. It goes all around what you do, whether you want it to or not. It's around you. So it's going to be the ideas. It's going to be beliefs, behaviours, the attitudes and actions of probably everybody that's involved within your team and the club. Depending on where you are and what size the club is and the team, it'll be the coaches, it'll be the players, the parents, the administrators, the managers, the directors, the spectators. It's everybody, and that's the culture, because whether you recognise it or not, it will impact on the choices and decisions you make and the actions that you do. So I think it is all that stuff, and it's really hard. Like if you've got, you've got a very competitive culture and you're at a level where it is results driven, which is fine because if you're getting paid to perform, then it's results. It's a results business. We're at the development level of the game, which is more about trying to produce good football players. But if you're trying to produce wins at the weekend and the culture is about winning, then inevitably your philosophical approach to how you manage that team and those set of players, the values you put in place and the habits you try and generate will be very different to what maybe me and you are trying to do on a Saturday, Sunday or a midweek session with the players that we've got at the age and stage they are. But even then you can have two different cultures. So, you've got two cultures that are about winning games, but one might be about we still want to win, but actually we want to win in a certain way we want the players to play, and others we don't really care, we just want to win these games. And even then it could change, because actually there'll be some games that actually we should be able to play well against particular teams because we're better than them, and other games where actually I don't care how we play today, let's just make sure we win this game today. So and that can be professional or even non-professional football. The culture will impact on you. There's no doubt about it. You as a coach and the players as well. Are we a physical, aggressive kind of culture, or are we kind of a soft, nice, let's just play some football kind of culture? I mean, you can see that if you compare something like maybe the Arsenal team of the last 10 years compared to something like maybe the Chelsea team or the City team now for sure, or Liverpool now. That the different cultures. They're still results oriented teams, obviously, and it is about winning. But they have a different culture, and that does impact then on how they're managed, coached, the training that takes place, and the principles they put in place under that to underpin what they're trying to achieve. And that goes all the way down. I mean, that's at the highest possible level. But if you're talking about grassroots football and stuff, we see it ourselves. Some of the grassroots teams, you can tangibly sense the cultural difference between Team A and Team B. Where Team A at grassroots, where they're developing under 10s, are still very much about we will win this game on a Sunday. That is the culture of their players, their coaches, and the club itself. And other clubs, under 10s, grassroots, will be very much about, hey, it's full rotation, rock up, let's play some football, it's a bit of fun, smiles on faces, we don't care about the result, we're just going to come to enjoy it.
That's you definitely you're right. You kind of see that whenever you play when we play on the Sunday morning, you see these different cultures, and I think you see it in the coach, you see it in the players, and you definitely see it in the parents, and I think again it comes back to the coach. He's almost a leader, right? He should be setting that culture. If ideally it's not winning, in my view, it's not winning at all costs. It should be a culture where we want to win games, clearly, but we want to win games in the right way. We want equal game time. We want to rotate positions. We want the way that players can develop them in the most, right? That's my kind of personal view. And you can see when you play a team where they've got that kind of culture, and you can see a team where actually it's just win at all costs, and it isn't as pleasant experience for the boys if they're in that environment. Now, it's good that they have to go through that because they have to learn, right? And again, it's a whole learning for them. So
I think so. Agree with what you said. What I would challenge back a little bit is the coach setting the culture. So I think that can be quite hard. I think they can influence the culture.
Yes.
And in an ideal world, you want the coach to fit in with the culture, but it's so big. I'm not sure, especially in the short term, what they can do. I think the coach can certainly influence the philosophy and the values they put in place 100%. But the culture, we've seen it. This is and so when does it become a problem? Well, it becomes a problem when you've got different people within the same organisation with different cultural beliefs. That's the thing. So what you'd kind of hope is that that's not the case. Now, whether you're, let's say, for argument, whether you're a long ball team, win at all cost, or a try and play lovely football and doesn't matter results kind of team, doesn't really matter. But what you kind of need is everyone being on the same page with that, right? Because then you don't get the problems. Then as a coach, you go and think, do you know what? I'm okay. This suits me philosophically. The culture, I fit well with that particular team because that's what they want, or sorry, that particular club as an organisation. I know the players are on board with that. I know the parents are too, so we're good to go. Right. The problems come when actually you've got different opinions about the way in which to achieve the outcomes, and I think that's when as coaches we run into trouble. And best intentions, it's not about necessarily what's right and what's wrong, because that is arguable to some, or debatable at least to some extent. But it's about marrying up all those different environments to make it work for you. So having the culture that suits you, having the philosophy that works within that culture, putting in those values and principles that are going to underpin that philosophy, and then obviously trying to execute that with good habits. When you don't have everyone lined up, then it becomes a problem.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, one of the things that I've kind of done for my team, so we, which I think is along the similar lines where I think you're going here, is that we had kind of codes of conduct. So I put in place codes of conduct for players. And it was just something that I shared with the players and shared with the parents. Well, actually shared it with the parents, and then the parents shared it with the players because it's under 10s. We had a code of conduct for the players, so it's how we want them to behave in training and match days. We had a code of conduct for parents, interestingly, so how we want them to kind of behave on match days. So things like we want them to encourage and support, we want clapping, we want a lot of positivity from the touchline, those kind of things. And we wanted them to appreciate good play from both teams, that kind of stuff. And there was more in there. And then we had a code of conduct for coaches as well. So it was like around, so it's clear to the parents and the players what they can expect from us. So within that code of conduct, I think the first bullet point we had was that it's not about winning at all costs. It's about player development. We want to win games for sure, but for us, it's about the longer term player development. That's the key point. And there was other things in there. So we put that out, and we only actually done that this year. We hadn't done it prior to this year, and it's something that I can't remember where I picked it up from. But I think it certainly helps. And whenever there were any kind of issues that come up, I was able then to go back to the code of conduct that this is what we've agreed at the beginning of the season. This is how we should behave, and kind of thing.
You've got a point of reference.
A point of reference, exactly. And be it with the players, and it wasn't many with the players, but be it with the parents, you could go back, and that was your, as you said, the point of reference.
So that sounds to me like what you've done there is fantastic, but you're kind of using the code of conduct to evidence your values and expectations, which are part of your philosophy to try and influence the culture. Yeah. So, and you did right. That's where I think a coach can influence the culture. You can't necessarily change it, because you can't guarantee that every parent's going to say. They might say yes, nice one, Mark, I agree with that, but will they actually follow it? You'd hope so.
Yes.
And also another team of parents, and you've got great parents, and they do, and that's, I think, so back to the respect bit for you again. But I've seen other code of conducts we're giving out to parents, and they completely ignore it. We see it, and I think, and that's where you need the other stuff to fit into place. So other parents to say, hold on a minute, you know what, this is the kind of club we are. The club to say, sorry, but this is the kind of club we are. So to realign those that kind of go a little bit off piece with this, to back on, no, this is our cultural beliefs. This is our coach's philosophy, or our club's philosophy, and this is the values that we put in place to make sure that happens. So what you've done there with the values and expectations is trying to influence that, which is exactly what we have to do as coaches, right? What we should be doing. You just can't always guarantee that's going to completely drive the culture, but it will certainly impact on it. Because if you don't do that stuff, then you've given up. You've certainly thrown more of the elements to the culture of your team and the club to the wins, right? To chance.
Totally agree.
Especially when you're bringing new players, you think? 'Cause that's quite important, right?
Yeah. And I think even more so, right? Because a lot of the players that in grassroots clubs, a lot of the players come from the same school, or could came from the same school, or two local schools. So generally, they're within the area. Sometimes you might have boys that join, or players that join from outside the area that maybe have a different background, a different culture, right? So having those kind of principles, or having something like that as a reference point, it certainly helps, I think.
Definitely. All right, so we spoke about values, fantastic. We spoke about philosophy and culture, which is brilliant. We haven't mentioned habits yet, and like for me, I think this is what it all comes down to, really. I mean, this is coaching, right? What we're trying to do is create the habits that we think are the positive ones to drive the right outcomes.
Yeah, I agree. I think just one point, maybe this is a side point, but I think the other thing about having a good environment, and I think this is linked to habits, is that the way I think about it is that we're coaching players, or we're coaching, I guess, under 10s, under 7s. We want to develop them to be better football players. Now, if we're brutally honest, and they're probably not going to be professional football players. It's such a small percentage that are going to get there.
Statistically, the odds are against them, right?
Exactly, 100%, yeah. But I think the other thing that as coaches, and having the right environment, it starts just to teach them some kind of life skills as well, right? I think things like it teaches them teamwork, it gives them confidence, commitment, resilience, and that's something I think we want to come back to. Resilience, I do anyway. Hard work, courage, all those kind of things, leadership. I think it helps them in the when they've kind of stopped playing football, and hopefully they won't. They carry on playing football, but I hope at some point when they stop playing football, they will look back and say, look, I learned not just football skills here, football development, also learned things that help me in life as well. And I think that's key, right?
Life skills, right?
Life skills, yeah.
But again, I think you're right to mention it, and that's your approach, and you'd like to think that other coaches would be similar, because I'd value that as well. But that's part of your principles. Again, it's part of your philosophy, and hopefully it's part of the culture of the club and the team that you're in. Because what you're saying there is actually, you know what? We coach the person first and the player second, which for me, again, I think it's fundamental. And, okay, you could do a whole separate episode on that, and maybe we will at some point, but you're right, that would be in your philosophical approach to how you coach your players that you have. I'm going to focus on some of that life skill stuff: resilience, teamwork, communication, never giving up, being creative, supporting each other, all that kind of stuff that actually would transfer from a football pitch straight into the office when they in 15 years time or 10 years time, when they're out working the big wide world, right? Which is good stuff.
And I think this links back into the habits, because I think if you're creating good habits, and be it for football or for life skills or however you want to kind of describe it, I think it's important, really important. And again, I think it's the environment, or it's your culture and philosophy and values that kind of drive that exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think it was Aristotle that said we are what we repeatedly do, and I think I certainly am that. I repeatedly do. We did a futsal session last night with under sevens, Mark, and you saw the session with the players. Now, I mean, these are 6-7-year-old kids, so let's put it in perspective here, But based on our values of respect, effort, fun that we've had in place for a long time, and I think based on the environment in which we create at training, and the philosophical approach we have with the players that the parents buy into, and the culture generally, which I think we've got it pretty aligned up, not perfect, but pretty aligned up. I think if you saw the players last night, it was 100 miles an hour. The intensity was for an hour and 50 minutes. They did not stop. There was not a single tear. There were some tough tackles, but nothing over the top. There was encouragement. There was communication. There was teamwork. As a coach, I had to say very little. At one point, we made the pitch half the size, so the space was tiny. We let them play a bit tougher off the walls a little bit to get them, a bit used to the resilience. And I was on the brink of thinking, do I need to stop at this point and intervene? Because these are still young kids, still playing. But they reined themselves back in at the right times. There was some brilliant football played. The attitude was spot on. And for me, I left. The football was great, and it was great to see the boys progress in that sense. But genuinely, I left and came home from the session last night reflecting and thinking, God, for a bunch of 6-7-year-old boys, their attitude was phenomenal. Phenomenal. And don't get me wrong, these are good kids, but you can only take some of the credit for this as coaches, but I'm going to take the credit for this in the sense that on behalf of the club and the parents and everyone else that we've created that over the last 18 months with these players to create, hey, look, we don't give up. We're resilient. We keep going. I even done a thing where we had the Oranges playing non-bibs, and the Oranges were about 18-10 up or something after the third quarter. So they'd won the game, and one of the boys was flying last night, so he was really dominant, which was great for him. But no one gave up. Everyone was still competing. But in the fourth quarter, the start of the fourth quarter, I said, forgot to tell you guys, actually the first we've got has just been a practice. We're going back to 0-0. And it was a deliberate test, because the boy that was particularly dominant last night, that was on a winning team at that stage, his resilience hasn't always been as great as it could possibly be. And I was keen to see how he reacted to it. And he looked at me and he pulled a face and he was like, that's not fair. And I was like, no, it's not, is it? Deliberate test of him. And he took his eyes off me, got back in the game, blew the whistle, and off they go again. They won the fourth quarter by working really hard. Now, because that's a bit cruel, these are kids, but that's life, isn't it? Learning some of those things. Because sometimes you go to a game and the ref won't give you decisions. Not because they're cheating. They haven't seen it or something, So rather than give up and have a tantrum and, sit on your bum or throw you cross your arms and give up on the game, you're going to have to learn to, in the moment, to refocus and go again and have to try and win a game sometimes second time around. And again,
a couple of things I would say to that. One, I think, again, it comes back to life skills, right? Again, you're going to get knocks in life, but you have to get up and get on with it. Otherwise, you're never going to move forward. But that aside, the session was excellent. And I think it's worth just going back to what you were talking about in the first, I think it was the first 10 or 15 minutes of the session, where you made the pitch. It must have been 10 metres long, maybe.
Yeah, it's probably about 12, maybe a little fraction longer.
You were playing 4 against 4. In that pitch, and when you first started doing it, I was watching, thinking,
no goalkeepers, big goals, but no goalkeepers.
That's right, and I was thinking, wow, this is going to be interesting. And it was pretty chaotic. It was very chaotic, I would say.
Yep.
And I think the boys were a bit puzzled. They couldn't quite work it out. So I think you let it play for a little bit, and I was really interested in watching it. And then you brought in a condition to say you can't score. You have to make 3 passes before you score.
Yep.
And a tiny little pitch.
Yep.
And I thought to myself, well,
6-7-year-old boys.
Yeah. And I thought, wow, this is
no success can happen here, is there?
Yeah, you're not. You might get 1 or 2 passes, but one of the teams particularly adapted very well, and they scored, I think, 3 or 4 goals pretty quickly playing that football. The other team were a little bit slower, didn't quite get it straight away. They were scoring goals after maybe 1 pass or 2 passes. They weren't kind of fully perhaps engaged, and I think you stopped it, brought them together. They went back out and done the same thing, and then both teams got it and started playing great football. And it was just the way that, even to the point where you got a 6-year-old just in front of goal, he would then kind of come back and pass it out. And I know it's probably not perfectly game related in that situation, but I think the condition you put in was great for that little match, and it was superb. And I think the other thing it did actually, then you kind of made it a bigger pitch. You put the goals back to kind of the full size pitch you normally play, and then the boys just realised, actually, look how much space we got now, and it just made them think.
That's that appreciation of the environment.
Yeah.
Look, and I would not have done that session a year ago. To be honest with you, I wouldn't have the confidence to do it a year ago. And this is where we develop and learn as coaches. It was a tiny space for 8 young boys to be put into to play football, and some of the football they played in that 10 minutes was fantastic for boys that age. To string 3 passes together at least. And there was a great question by one of the boys that so I say 3 passes, and this is where language is so important, especially for the youngsters. So I said, right, okay, now we're going to keep going. It was already scrappy, but let's challenge you even further. We're going to keep going, and we're going to do 3 passes before you can score. And one of the players said, what, just 3 passes? Brilliant question, because actually, because literally, I meant 3, a minimum of 3, but I never said a minimum of 3. So and then the game unfolds, and it's no coincidence that actually that particular player as well was fantastic at that activity, because this is about using your brain and engaging in things. So straight away, he's thinking ahead. He wants to understand what he can do to influence the result in that. And he was excellent with 2 or 3 others on his team. They were excellent, and you're right, some of the boys struggled, but when they started seeing the other team have success, then actually, do you know what? I'm not just going to get the ball and kick it and go. I'm actually going to start building now and playing the thing. And you're right. And you don't want the boys to run away from the goal and start playing all backwards in a match. But this wasn't about scoring goals. This is about awareness of space, about feeling pressure, about finding space, about moving, playing away from the pressure into where your teammates are. It's about communication, moving off the ball in a really, really tight space. And I wouldn't have done it yet. And it wasn't me. It was the game that did the teaching, right? It wasn't me. It was the session.
Yeah, look, I've given you a platform there, right, to build up your to build you up there. I don't like to give you credit, but it was very good. I think the other thing, that one of the things we've spoken about last week, Chris spoke about number of touches in training session, and just that game alone, the boys must have had probably, I don't know, 100 touches in such a short
in the
space
first
of
10
time.
minutes each.
It was pretty impressive. Anyway,
so we're back to the thing. But I mean, the point of that was all about the fact I couldn't have done that. I wouldn't have considered as a coach a year or so ago, but I couldn't have done that with the players if we hadn't put the right environment in place over the last 18 months or so. Because I mean, we've done futsal with the under-10s before, and there was a lot of tears for a while. We even stopped doing it indoors because it was just a few many bruises and bounce off walls and floors. But because we second time around with these players, I think because we've set the environment right early on and positioned it a bit better than we did previously, you can do that with these, and that's the point I'm trying to make here. It's not, it isn't a genius piece of coaching or a wonderfully planned session. It's just, hey, get the environment right, and that's what you can get out of it. Because the players will rock up and they'll give you what they need to give you, or give themselves in order to develop their game. And if we did those sessions for the next, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, I'll be pretty confident they will continue to be a phenomenal team. They already are, but I just think they would just kick on again and again and again. Because of the environment as much as anything else.
And I think you can definitely see the benefits of playing futsal on a Wednesday night, starting to transfer into Saturday training and into Sunday matches. No, I don't see your training actually, but certainly in the matches you can start to see some of the football they play. And I think once those pitches get better, because they're not great at the moment. Once they get better, I think you really will see a lot more of the benefit of it. And I know there's a big push from the FA, and I know Pete Sturgis is really pushing the whole futsal side. But I think you really will see the benefits.
Well, yeah, and again, it's not the important thing here is about saying whatever you believe in, whether it's futsal, something else, whatever it might be, and whatever way of playing the game. If you can get the environment right to suit what you're trying to achieve, it will amplify the sessions you're doing. I promise that. And that's the thing here. It's like, you know what? You could have the best session with the best ideas from the right thing for your players, but if the environment's not quite right, because either the culture's not quite right, so the messages are mixed, the philosophy doesn't really underpin it, the values you've got in place are just a bit too complicated, confusing, or not there at all, you're just going to jump from pillar to post a little bit. And yes, I'm sure the players will improve, because you do enough things enough time, you're going to get better at it, right? But will they improve as much as they possibly could if you've got the other things lined up first? And we've not talked about a theme, we've not talked about warm-ups, where you put your cones, your bibs, what you work on, whether none of that stuff. We're talking about just the overriding environment first. Get that right, and then you can focus on the other stuff, not the other way around, because you'll see the benefits straight away from that. It's hard if you've had a team for maybe 5 years plus and you're trying to remold things, because habits are already in place, right?
You can do it though. I think you can do it.
100% you can do it. And do you know what? And I think you can do it quickly. I think it will change pretty quickly. The minute you think, right, this is it, and you spell it out and you're clearing the communication again to everyone that needs to be communicated to. I mean, we even send out our match day expectations to our opposition for home games. So we send out a sheet of paper to saying, look, we're looking forward to playing you at the weekend. Just to be perfectly clear, these are our expectations, you know, and it's about, you do not argue with the referee. This is the players first approach. It's not about the parents. It's about learning first. We're not here to necessarily win a game. We want results is not our focus. Winning for us is about the performance of the players individually and collectively. And we send it, and we say please only confirm that you're going to come to our game at the weekend if you're confident that your players and all the people coming can meet these expectations. So I'm sure most don't even get to see the document, but for us, it's doing the right thing. It's setting our values out early and stuff, and saying that's the kind of club we want to be, and the kind of team we want to be. Now, what those expectations are, we've put in our own ones, but you could put your ones, and you might have completely different ones. Absolutely fine. That's your philosophy and your decision, but put them down and live and breathe them, like you said at the very beginning.
And I think it's a great document, actually. You don't see many teams doing that. I think it's a point of reference that you can come back to if things don't go the way they should do, or there's kind of incidents. It's a point of reference for you. So I think it's really good.
Okay, I think we've covered some stuff here, but just some practical things. So,
yeah.
Look, I've got a list of stuff that I think, if coach says, okay, it all sounds great, guys, I get it, yeah, brilliant, but what can we actually do? What are the things we should do? How does it look like in practice? I've written down a few things here. You've got a few. Should we just suggest a few that may be of use and may implement some of this? So the first one I would say, for me, it's putting the players' needs first. It's a true saying that players don't care what you know until they know that you care, right? But I just think put the players' needs first, because you can't go wrong then. The players will respect you a lot more and buy into what you're doing, and the parents will love you because they can't argue if you're putting their players' needs first. So that'd be my first tip around the environment.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. I think you've got to have trust and respect, right, from the players. They need to understand that you're in it for them, and you're not in it maybe just for your own son, or you're not in it just because you like football or something. They need to understand that you're in it for them, and I think that's a big step to starting to get that environment right. Yeah, totally agree.
Parents want the best for their kids, right?
Yeah.
Different ways of showing it sometimes, but that's what they want. So, you know what? It's much harder to argue against you if you get things wrong, if you're doing it with the best intentions for their kids. You've got the obligation to think about all the players, which I don't think parents always understand that. Most do, but not all of them always do. But you know what? You've got to think about all the boys equally. And I think the best coaches I see are the ones that, especially the parent coaches, the ones where you rock up and see their sessions and you couldn't tell which was their kid. Because actually, they're just all there. And I think, if you're in a professional environment where you're coaching players, because you're being paid to do so, well, again, don't have your favourites. It's the same difference, treat them all equally, let them all feel equally, and make a conscious effort that is like tangible to feel and see from those watching and the players themselves. So, because you'll get the better response, I think, from the players if you do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. I think one for me is positive communication. I think it's one. I think communication is key. Making sure that it's age appropriate, the way you're kind of speaking, making sure that you're communicating with parents, with your other coaches, with the players. But I think more so when you're coaching under, I don't know, in the foundation phase, for example, is having that positive communication, making it when a player does something good, you kind of point it out. This great work, great, and be specific around what they've done. Lovely pass,
the bit,
great pass. Yeah,
what did they do?
Exactly. Yeah. So they
well done, Jimmy. Well, what was well done?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and even and I think that perhaps that they might make a good pass, and you can say wonderful pass, great pass, Steve. But you could then come back and say, what else could you have done?
Yeah.
And then you kind of question them. Then they're thinking about, all right, I made a good pass. What else could I do? Kind of thing. I think positive communication is really, really important. And maybe I think communication is maybe for a topic for another podcast with this, because there's so much in there. But it's certainly to help with the environment, you've got to have good communication, good positive communication.
Totally agree. Okay, and so I also think putting the process ahead of the outcomes. Again, this is environmental stuff, so it doesn't sound like it, but it is. So what you're saying is, look, it's not about can we win the game at the weekend. It's about, okay, what do we want to put in place to give us the best chance of having the outcomes that we want? Yep. So don't focus on the result, because that just adds pressure. It just adds stress. I don't care if the kids are 6, 16 or 26. It just adds pressure to them. You know, what do they need to do as part, individually and collectively, to be able to produce the process you're looking for that should drive the outcomes that you want to achieve? It's simple, and that, whether you're playing 5-a-side, 7-a-side, 3-a-side, 9-a-side, 11-a-side, it doesn't matter. You're going to have processes in place that you want to achieve. Yep. Yeah. So focus on that. Yep. Focus on that. And do you know what? If you come up against a team or opposition or a player that's better than you are at that, well, that's your lesson. You're going to have to work harder, aren't we, training, and think or find a different solution maybe to the problem. You know. But I think if you focus on the process rather than the outcomes, and that's your environmental position, particularly a philosophical one, that's your philosophy that we're going to focus on the process first and the outcomes will follow, then I think that will be a much more positive learning space for the players and probably the parents as well and everyone else involved. They don't always see it when they don't win on a Sunday or a Saturday, but actually, you know, if they can see little Jimmy improving a little bit more or little Lisa getting a bit more time on the ball, well, you know what? We're doing the right things, okay? And, you know, again, it's age and stage appropriate. I totally understand that. But if you look at the development phase, then that has to be in there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think linked to that probably is the fact that you recognise effort and resilience above everything else. And Chris spoke about it last week, right? Being the hardest working team, being the hardest working player. And that's something that I'd kind of talk to my players about at training, in matches. Just go out there, and then even, to be honest, with my own children, when they go and play wherever they go and play, that just be the hardest working player. You may not be the best player today because something doesn't go for you. Just be the hardest working player. Things won't go right for you, but just go back to, right, what do I need to be? I need to be the hardest working player.
Totally agree.
And I think that's really, really, really key.
Then you get the most out of the session, right? It's like, okay, it might be you and 12 players training the session. Who's going to get most out of it? Yeah. Well, if I work hard, it'd be me. It doesn't matter where I start, where I finish. I'll get the most out of this next hour, 2 hours of a session. Yep. Okay, a couple more and then we'll finish up. So I think for me, and I think coaches drop this one too quickly, fun must be embedded throughout the session. And again, I would challenge that at any age, you know, particularly even if you're doing professional coaching with professional players that are being paid to win. And I'll tell you why I think fun has to be in there, because people perform better when they're enjoying themselves. Yeah. So if you want the best performance from your players, if you can make it fun for them, you will get more out of it. Yeah. Now, it is serious fun. It's not about being on a playground or larking around or kicking around in the park, but it should still be fun. Yeah. And I had a coach at the weekend telling me that they've gone back to their old team because their team is struggling, and they did a session. They've basically gone back to cones, unopposed, kind of very technical practices. And he said to me, quote, "It wasn't fun at the end, but I know it was the right thing for the boys to do." And I can't buy into it. I don't believe it. You're not going to get as much. I didn't see the session. It may have been fantastic, but you're not going to get as much out of your players if they're not enjoying it. You're just not going to. So you may think it's the right thing for them to do, but then our challenge as the coach is, all right, how can we get them doing the right things, but in a way that's fun? You know, whether they enjoy it. So how can we make it into something that's going to work for them? And I totally understand that not all players have the same definition of fun. So actually, some might really like a technical, you know, unopposed practice, which is fine if that's right for them, if that's the decision you made it on. But most would like something probably with a bit of competition involved to it, a little bit game-based, that kind of thing. And if we can think of ways in which we can get out the technical thing we're focusing on in a fun way, then my personal opinion is you'll get more out of that session and the development of those players around that particular aspect of the game by doing it, by having that approach.
Yeah, I totally agree. The sessions just have to be fun, and it comes back to something we spoke about earlier as well. Is players staying playing football, right? If they're not enjoying it, then they're going to go and find something else to do. There's so many other things they can do.
Exactly.
Other sports, PlayStations, all sorts of things. That you want. The idea is that you're trying to kind of keep these players that you're coaching, make them better, and keep them interested in football for when they get older. And if you're not making the sessions fun, then firstly, you're not going to really get the best out of them, and then ultimately you're probably not going to keep them playing football as they get older. So it really, having fun is key, and even little things like when my players arrive, I can meet and greet all my players. It's not always easy to do, but we have
smile
free play,
smile
on the face, ask them how's it going, what's been going on, kind of maybe have a little 30 seconds, shout their name, a little bit of excitement, and.
Well, you play football, right? You don't work football. You play football. You play exactly. Football, right? So
exactly, fun's a big one. Should we do?
Got two more here. Is that all right?
Yeah, go on.
I'm going to do it reverse order actually. So ownership to the players as much as possible.
Yeah,
give them as much ownership as you can. You know, now, again, it's age and stage appropriate. I totally understand it, but don't sell your players short. You know, there is your under 10s can take the warm up session. I'm telling you now this week, and they should be. Have a training captain each week and tell them the week before. Right, Luke, you're training captain next Saturday. Okay, that means plan your warm up. You've got 10 minutes with the players to do a warm up. Okay, so you're owning it next week. So he's got all week to think about it. Let mum and dad know that he's doing that. If he doesn't want to do it, he can let you know. But that day, so you can get somebody else and give them a week's notice. But getting the players to take ownership of the session, part of the session, whatever they can, equipment, putting the equipment away, getting the equipment out, setting up the things, whatever it may be, the more you give them, what it shows them is, I trust you. It's not about me, it's not the Scott show, this is your team, this is your time, and it's up to you to own a bit of that responsibility. Because then when it comes to the chaos on the Saturday or Sunday or the midweek games, and it's all going a bit wrong or whatever's going on in there, they can look at the moment and make decisions for themselves and their team because they've had to do it for a number of times during training for the last number of years, you know. But to expect as a coach for our players to be able to take ownership and deal in the moment in games when we've given the opportunity to practice that in the environment that we've created for them, then it's a false economy. And, you know, trust it. Yes, it might not be the best warm-up. You might be able to do a much better warm-up as their coach, but technically... but the kind of intangibles you're going to get out of getting one of your players to do it, the camaraderie, the communication, the banter, all the stuff that goes on with that kind of thing, you know, the competition, the nerves, the pressure. We all know that coaching isn't as easy as it looks, you know. I'm saying testimony to that. But, you know, but I just give the players ownership and then find clever ways in which you can do that.
You're right for sure. It's not actually. It's probably one of the harder ones out of all the things. For me, all the things we can have gone through here. I think player ownership is one of the harder things. There's lots of little things you can do, for sure. But I think actually, when it comes to the session, you really need to think through how you do it. I think you're right in what you say, but you've got to think it through. And I think a little bit it becomes trial and error. A little bit sometimes things work, and maybe other things don't work as well. But I think it's something you need to. Yeah, I agree.
But even when it doesn't work, I think it's almost worked because that's a learn, right?
Yeah,
but you are right. But it doesn't work for you as a coach, and since it hasn't made the session any better in that moment. But if little Jimmy's crashed with his warm-up session because he's just all gone wrong, he's made a mistake, he'll learn loads from that. Yeah. If nothing else, he'll respect how hard it is for you as a coach doing this job.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, so you got to, it is giving up a bit of control, and it won't probably run as pretty as it might do otherwise. Yeah. But you're still going to get lots of gain out of that experience.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And the last one, don't forget about the brain. If you're doing stuff with your players that doesn't require them to think, don't do it.
Yeah.
Honestly, don't do it. If they're not got to use their brain at the same time, they've got to use their feet and their body and their physical strength and speed. Well, don't do it, but certainly make sure there's enough of using their brain within your sessions because football's a thinking game, right? It's the most important muscle you've got in the body for your matches. And I just see so much stuff get spelt out to players. I see some good stuff as well where they get told nothing and they have to work on it loads. But I think sometimes we tell them everything and we want to see the physical and technical ability of the players.
But then when it comes to the randomness of the game, and they can't quite do that stuff we've seen on a training, we can't work out why they can't do it. Well, what the variables in the match just means you need the brain to come first. You know, the thinking comes before the action, right?
Yep.
So work on it. Again, it's not easy, and you got to be conscious of. Well, it's not easy for some of us. I struggle with it, but if I'm conscious about that being on my agenda, then as part of my environment that I'm creating for the players is you will be thinking in my session, come prepared to think as well as to run and kick. You know, you'll be thinking too, well, they come prepared for that, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think if you need to have, within your session, you need to have lots of problem-solving opportunities for players. That's the way I think about it. I know we kind of have slightly different views on this unopposed versus opposed kind of ball mastery piece. But I'm fully on board with that. There needs to be as many decision-making opportunities for players in a session, 100%.
I was at, I won't say I was at one of the top Category A Premier League academies in London on Tuesday evening, and I saw lots of unopposed practice, and I thought about you. We'll talk about it on another podcast, but I saw lots, and I thought Mark would be loving it. So they call it Technical Tuesday, so apparently it's different on a Thursday and a Saturday, but yeah, there's obviously a place for it, and these guys know more than I do. So if they're doing it, your argument's getting some strength.
Maybe they have Fun Friday.
Technical Tuesday and Fun Friday. You'll have fun once a week in this environment. Exactly. All right. I just want to finish off with a little thing here. So I just think it's important to remember that people, and especially children, they learn best when the demands of the environment match their intellectual, psychological, and their motor skills, and will really excel when they are loving what they're doing. Yeah. And for me, I think that's it. So we've kind of gone on lots of stuff here, but get the environment right, guys, if you can. You know, we don't want to preach and tell people what they should and shouldn't be doing, but if you're not focused, firstly, on the environment before everything else, I think you might be missing a trick. And that does mean looking at the culture, the philosophy, looking at your values, habits, expectations, all that kind of stuff. Because if you can get that right, then get the X's and O's right and all the other session plan stuff we spoke about in episode 1, you know what? You're going to have a happy team, happy parents. You're going to enjoy the sessions more. Yes, they'll be challenging. Yes, they'll be a bit chaotic. Yes, there'll be moments when things don't go quite right. But that's all for the benefit of the players over the longer term.
Yeah.
A lot of that is based around the foundation phase, I would say, and kind of, you know, that development stage of players. But I would still argue a lot of this stuff will transfer into a professional environment, whatever level the players are at.
It will for sure. Yeah. I think we covered a lot there, and I hope that answers the question. I think there's a lot in there, so I'm sure that it'd be great that
we broke our 1 hour rule.
Yeah. Well, I think we do that quite regularly, to be honest. So yeah,
Marky, other resources, anything you've come across around this stuff, just really quickly, that you would recommend anyone to look out for if they want to delve a bit deeper into this world?
So I think there's lots out there. There's lots of other great podcasts out there for a start. I think there's lots of great books. Some of the books that I've read, there's a book called Futsal, which by Pete Sturgis, which is an excellent book. It's a lot of stuff on futsal, so it was really interesting on that side. But there's a big piece in environment in there and keeping it fun and things like that. And actually, the two best books I think I've read is one is an FA official guide. It's called Psychology for Football. Right. It's really good. It's a little bit old now. There's references to Sven-Goran Eriksson in there, so it's kind of
it's not perfect. Then,
it's not perfect, but it is very good. There's a whole book around that kind of thing, and then the Soccer Coach's Blueprint is very good as well. That's definitely worth a read. Okay, that's something that I kind of purchased recently, and it's very good.
I think I've read the first one you said, but not the second one. But I'll look out for that.
Yeah.
Couple of suggestions from my part then. I think obviously you may have heard of the book called Legacy. It's about the All Blacks by James Kerr, but it's a really good book. You've probably heard of Mindset. That's the Carol Dweck book. There's quite a lot, but that's definitely worth reading. A more recent book, I think, is The Barcelona Way by Damien Hughes. That's about the culture. That's really good about Barcelona, what they did there, particularly under Pep. So it's worth a read, and it relates to football. And there's The Culture Code by Danny Coyle as well. So the books, if you're looking for a book to read, obviously they're all on Amazon, I'm sure. And a podcast, we both like this one, I think, Changing the Game Project, John O'Sullivan.
Yeah,
I mean, they talk about lots of different sports and different areas, but some really good stuff on there. And again, I think philosophically probably lined up with us, but doesn't mean you're still worth listening there. And there's lots of others out there as well to listen to and find if you're looking.
Yeah, I think Dan Abrahams has a lot of good stuff for Dan Abrahams. I've listened to a lot of good stuff, and he's got books out as well, which are very good.
Yeah, good shout. Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm going to test you now, Mark. Do you know our Twitter feed?
I'll leave that one to you, actually.
All right, look, genuinely, we're so grateful. Thanks to Josh again for we'll reply back an email, obviously, but thanks for your email, and I hope this has been an insight into how we see culture and the environment for you and for other listeners. It'd be great to hear from you, as Mark said previously, getting your thoughts on things we can speak about, getting your opinions on stuff, helping us learn, because we are keen to learn. So what your thoughts are around anything that you think is important in the world of football specifically, but sport more broadly, would be great. You can get us on Twitter, which is @SoccerCoachCast, or you can email us, which is info@thesoccercoachingpodcast.com. We would be grateful. I don't know why we say this, but apparently you've got to say this if you've got a podcast. If you could subscribe, if you find us on Apple Podcasts or iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify, we're on all those now. And if you scroll down to where it says write a review, you can click on that. You can select the appropriate number of stars from 1 to 5 and write a few comments. No issues with how many stars you select. Whatever you do, but please put a comment in there. So if it isn't, good, bad or indifferent, please tell us the reason for it. And then, you know what, we will endeavour to try and improve our podcasts in as much as we endeavour to try and improve our coaching every week.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah, well said. I think you've got a job for life there. Excellent.
Well, we can talk about the QPR defeat that's looming this Friday when we meet next week, Mark. Sound good?
Brilliant.
All right, thanks. Have a good week.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers. Bye-bye.